Hello and welcome to From Panels to Pictures. This is the Spider-Man No Way Home full spoiler special, and I do mean that this is going to be a full spoiler show. So if you have not seen Spider-Man No Way Home, please do not continue watching. Now, I'm not telling you to just click off the show, but I'm just warning you that we are going to kind of talk about everything that happens in the film. So please don't cry to me in the comments if something gets spoiled for you. You haven't seen the movie yet. Please go and see it. It's really a lot of fun. I am Paul, or Spider-Man Can't Remember My Way Home. This is Keith Isles from Home Media Minefield, or Spider-Man Doesn't Want to Go Home, and this is Liz. This is Liz, or Spider-Man Please Go Home.
I knew you were going to say
welcome to the show.
Also known as Spidey 1, Spidey 2, and Spidey 3.
Yes, very good. Welcome to the show. We hope you've watched the movie. It's lovely having you here. It's very unusual for us to have three of us on the show at once. Very grateful to Keith for dropping by today and
crashing to do this. Your party.
Oh no, this is great. So we're going to try and get opinions from these guys about how they feel about the movie, and a bit later on I'll kind of wrap up about how I feel about it. I just want to give you a quick synopsis. With Peter Parker's identity now revealed, our friendly neighborhood web slinger is unmasked and no longer be able to separate his normal life as Peter Parker from the high stakes of being a superhero. When Peter asks for help from Doctor Strange, the stakes become even more dangerous. Sorry, I misread that, forcing him to discover what it truly means to be Spider-Man. Now, that is a good kind of no reveal type of thing. It's stuff we all know from the trailers. So, I mean, guys, going in, were you expecting this film to be as packed as it was? Was that something you were hoping for?
Yes. Okay. So as you mentioned, the trailers give you a certain amount of information about what to expect without going like full blown spoilers. They, it leads you, to, the conclusion that, this film is going to be like knocking down universe walls between, the Tom Holland Spider-Man films and the Spider-Man films of the past, from 2002 onward. So 20 years worth of films, really. This is what people have been speculating about the whole time, building up to this film, which has had like an enormous amount of speculation sort of placed upon it. But they revealed in the trailers Doc Ock, Alfred Molina in the role, and Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. So it's like, okay, going in, we already know that we are going to be getting these universes colliding. So I did expect it to be a packed film in terms of what they were going to bring into it. What people were mostly speculating about, and what happily we did get was not just the villains, but also the heroes of those films. I feel like I was expecting that. And, at this point, I probably would have been pretty disappointed if I didn't get it.
Okay.
But what I wasn't expecting were some of the other villains, which, I was just saying off air to Keith. I wasn't actually expecting as many villains as we did see. There were a couple that, did surprise me. For example...
go on. Sorry.
The Lizard from, Dr. Connors from the first Amazing Spider-Man film. Wasn't really expecting to see him. Flint Marko, aka Sandman from Spider-Man 3. Wasn't really expecting to see him. Jamie Foxx's Electro, I think I was, because in the trailer you do see, the electricity, and it's pretty easy to know who that's going to be. But yeah, it was more than I was expecting, in that way. So, and as packed as it was, I think it worked really, really well.
Keith.
Yeah. I echo a lot of what Liz has said there. you know, I'd avoided as many spoilers as possible prior to going into this, so so that there was some surprise for me. And I think this film, for me, it's the best of the Marvel films. It's the best time I've had in the cinema since Avengers Endgame, because Avengers Endgame really hit everything for me. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me cheer, it gave me goosebumps, and it made me think that this 11 years and 22 movies, not all of which were great, but it kind of paid off at the end and was worth it, right? I had a very similar feeling leaving the cinema this time round as well. I'd been very unimpressed with Eternals, which was the previous Marvel film. Even though I think it was shot beautifully and had some great actors in it, I actually thought that I didn't care one iota about the plot or anything to do with it, and I found it really hard to see how it sort of fit into the MCU, you know, the Marvel universe. This film ticked absolutely every box for me. It did definitely borrow from another film that I loved from a couple of years back, which was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where they sort of did this in animation. But, you know, to do this in live action, obviously some of the DC shows have already done this sort of thing, but for Marvel to do it in live action and to give us absolutely what we want, but at the same time, rather than it just being sort of fan service the movie, which there was a lot of that in here, but likewise, it was a compelling and moving story. And it also operated as a really nice kind of soft reboot for Spider-Man moving forward. And I was thoroughly impressed with it. In fact, so much so that I saw it in IMAX at 6:30 a.m. on opening day. But I'm going later on tonight to watch it in 3D for the second time. So it delivered for me.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, I too, you know, sort of saw it at the very soonest possible screening, which in the US was Thursday, at 3:00. You know,
wow.
Weirdly,
we're actually ahead of you for once.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, so I was like, I just Wednesday, because I knew that the UK had already gotten it. I just didn't look at the internet. I didn't like talk to anyone. I just kind of went dark on all my social media, because, you know, because the experience of watching this, as much as you kind of could guess at some of the things that happened going in, it really, really is a film that you want to go into knowing as little as possible about what actually happens, you know, and who actually shows up, because those moments were like so joyous, like, you know, for a fan of, like, you know, of this, like, the character and the franchise. You know, in my screening, people were bursting into applause, like, yes, every time, you know, like when you know, Doc Ock first shows up on the bridge, everybody just went nuts. You know, particularly, I think the big moment that people just went crazy over was Andrew Garfield coming through the portal, you know, because
same
that
in
just
mine.
cemented it. Everybody just like, you know, there's wild applause, like, you know, it was a really fun cinema experience, because people, you know, everybody was just, you know, on the same you know, plane. Everybody was just thrilled, and like, you know, it really was like, you know, like just that kind of, you know, I was restraining myself by just clapping. I wanted to be like fist pumping and jumping up and down in my seat. Like, you know, it was like that sort of thing where I was
I had that in our screening. There was whoops, fist pumps, applause. In fact, the applause came even before the multiverse reveals in my screening, with the revelation of Matt Murdock, played by Charlie Cox. The audience went nuts. I mean, nuts. To the point that I could barely hear what the dialogue was. I mean, everyone went that mad.
Right. Which was so great. That moment was so great.
During the Charlie Cox reveal, hats off to them for just doing it as a throwaway scene, really, because he doesn't come back for the rest of the movie. That had the least amount of applause in the screening I saw. And the reason for that, I think, was that I went to see it quite sort of early afternoon, about 1:00, in like the Putney Odeon up here. after trying several cinemas to try and find a convenient time to see it, and because I didn't pre-book, I never pre-book. It's just if I rock up and I can go, great. If I can't, tough. I'll see it another day.
I pre-booked.
That's so you, Paul. That's so
well,
you.
Because I can't be asked around with pre-booking. So I went and got a seat. It was a packed screening. It was really comfortable screen, but the audience was very kid friendly. So it was a lot of young, because I think schools had just broken up or something, or were just about to break up. And it was a lot of sort of 12, 10-year-olds, or, you know, a bit older teenagers. And I've got a feeling that because of the adult nature of the shows that Charlie Cox had appeared in previously, they just weren't interesting. So there was a light smattering of applause, which got louder as more and more characters turned up. But yes, I agree that the loudest applause was definitely from Andrew Garfield. Interesting thing about seeing it at a screening full of teenagers, as I was leaving, I mean, you know, it's bound to be a film that leaves people with questions. And there was a group of teenage boys in front of me as I was coming out, and one of them turned to his friends and went, "I'm not being funny, yeah. I just want to know how Jamie Foxx can appear out of nowhere with such a sick fade." It's just like perfect, yeah.
I mean, it's a valid question. Valid question.
It was just that is awesome. I mean, the movie summed up.
That is one thing that the film did not address. I have to say, it was like, why is because Electro, from The Amazing Spider-Man, was like this dork with like, you know, a comb over and bad teeth, and like, you know, Jamie Foxx just shows up looking all smooth and like sick fade and, you know, all that.
Well, I think,
they don't explain it.
I mean, I think it's the multiversal energy, and you know, it's kind of. I think they do kind of explain it in a sort of sideways way. I don't think you ever get full explanations in Marvel movies.
Well, they sort of do, because in this, not only have these characters come through from different universes, but they've come from different points in time.
Yeah,
in those universes. So I thought
Jamie Foxx has been reassembled from pure energy.
That's true. That's true, because where they're sort of supposed to be, you know, like the points in time that they're supposed to have come from was the moments of their death. You know, fighting Spider-Man, essentially. You know, so that's why Peter is so reluctant to send them back to their respective universes, because he's basically sending them back to die. So Electro, I guess you know, you could kind of explain away his like, you know, hunky new look by by saying he's made of energy and he could recreate himself, you know, in a more appealing physical form. So I guess there is that. There are certain things that the film doesn't try too hard to explain. There are things where it's like, you know, you don't need to think about it too hard. What? Go on.
I've got to bring this point up before I forget. It is in effect it's the supervillain version of the snap and the blip.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can
see
the
that. Kind of multiversal Paul is the kind of is a nice analogy for what happened with everyone else with the snap and the blip. I think.
Right, because they just sort of like we saw in Hawkeye, you know, the last episode of Hawkeye, where for Yelena it was like no time passed. For these guys, no time has passed. Alfred Molina thinks he's still on the bridge fighting Tobey Maguire, and is asking where his machine is, and you know, and stuff like that. For them, you know, they don't, you know, sense that any time has passed or that they're in the wrong place. You know,
but on the flip side of that, I kind of like the fact that for the other Peters, that the time has passed, and I did sort of like the fact that they touched on this slightly in Spider-Man into the multiverse, but Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, but you know, you sort of had Tobey Maguire Spider-Man or Peter Parker had been, which I think is great, is after Spider-Man 3 ended, you know, he still had 15 years of being Spider-Man,
Right.
since we last saw him. And I thought that was quite intriguing, because you
I
do
think,
sort of think,
yeah,
oh yeah, what had happened to them after those films? And like Andrew Garfield's version says that he never really got over the whole Gwen Stacy thing, and
Right.
he said it's been years.
And he says, yeah, and I became bitter and, and jaded, and, and so there's an interesting story there. Like, oh, okay. So, maybe he became some darker version of Spider-Man in his universe.
Of course, what you're getting there are the Spider-Man sequels they planned but never got to make. Because I suspect that would have been the subject matter of Amazing Spider-Man 3. I think Tobey Maguire's journey would have been the subject of Spider-Man 4 that Sam Raimi was planning. And we know Venom was going to I think factor more into, I think, was it Spider-Man 4? Was he going to kind of feature more in that again?
Possibly.
So I think there's kind of the movies they never got to make, which I think is kind of Marvel's whole thing now. It's their, well, we can pull all this stuff in and spit it back out at you in a more interesting way, and that's good. I'm all for that. It's
to cut you off
yeah,
briefly,
please.
With an aside, one of the films that they never got to make, that they make a like a little joke of and allusion to, is the James Cameron scriptment that never got made, but
which is amazing, exists
out there in the
Oh, are you talking about the Electro thing?
I'm talking actually. I'm talking about the scene between Spidey and MJ on the rooftop when she makes a crack about, like, oh yeah, the female spider like seducing the or the male spider seducing the female. That is actually a sort of a reference to a moment in that script where they actually kind of
I've read
get sexy, like using that dialogue, and like she makes a joke of it, but it is actually pulled from the James Cameron script, which I thought was very clever.
Did anyone notice the moment where Electro had the costume, the old school costume, for a second? So there's a moment when Jamie Foxx, I can't remember if it's in the early scene with all the power lines or the later battle, as he's sort of coming down out of the sky, the lightning forms the electrified mask. For a second, and it's just like, I mean, it's an insane.
It's like they did in Hawkeye with the drawing of.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I love how they do things like that, and in fact, I think that the Green Goblin's costume, just made of his kind of homeless guy clothes, ends up, as it kind of gets shredded, it ends up looking like the original Green Goblin costume. Which I just thought was so smart,
the interesting thing I found about, especially with William Dafoe's Goblin, is that Peter, he spends the whole film relearning the lesson, with great power comes great responsibility, which is given very sharp focus at the end, or just before the very final act, in that heart-wrenching scene with May. But I feel that he's already living that throughout the film, because his choice is, actually, I'm not going to send these guys back to their deaths. I'm going to try and help them. I'm going to try and fix them. And it also kind of brings into focus how the interesting thing about a lot of Spider-Man villains is they're not villains, they're victims of circumstance. And sometimes it's circumstance of their own creation, but they're kind of victims of just bad science or bad luck. And I kind of like that about Spidey villains, because I feel with a lot of Batman villains, they're villains by choice, and they have bad intentions. I think these guys all had good intentions that were warped by the things that happened to them. Whether or not they do the things they do for selfish reasons, as with Electro, he just wanted to be, better looking and be noticed. And then ended up the way he was. And I think that there's an interesting thing there. And I think Peter understands that notion very well, and he connects with that, and he empathizes with that. And
because the same thing happened to Peter. Absolutely, it was all, it was an accident that he was bitten by the spider, and and whereas for him that led to a trajectory of heroism. You know, for these guys, it put them in a position to become villains. There is a great line, like there was one of the, you know, there were so many great lines throughout the film, but I love the line between Electro and Sandman, you know, where it's like, oh, well, yeah, I fell into a vat of electric eels, and Sandman's like, well, yeah, I fell into a vat of sand, and, you know, blah, blah, and it's like, gotta be careful where you fall. Like,
yeah. But it speaks to the slightly ludicrous nature of the 60s kind of radioactive, because there's that great thing by John Byrne when he redid the Spider-Man early stories in Spider-Man Chapter 1, and he said, oh, I had to put the accident that made Doc Ock and the accident that gave the spider radioactive abilities to bite Peter in the same scene, because as far as I was concerned, there were far too many radioactive accidents in the Marvel Universe in the 60s. And that's very true. And it speaks to the kind of slightly ludicrous nature of comics and, you know, the fact that we're dealing with 80-year-old characters. Yeah, I mean, I think that, especially with, like, Willem Dafoe, I think, needs an Oscar for this.
Oh my
role.
God! Like,
for this
unbelievable.
I thought he was fantastic, and I think he made you lurch instantly from compassion to hating him very well. The entire speech towards the end, where he talks about Aunt May's moral crusade, brilliant. Like, and that's actually some of the best writing I've ever heard in a Marvel movie in my life. That's a great scene.
Yeah,
and it's a very well put together scene.
But that was the point. That was the point I was sort of trying to make in my sort of brief summary, was the fact that even though this is clearly something that's made for fans, not just of the MCU, but of Marvel in general, okay, and I think it delivers on that. It still does it in a way that tells a compelling story that's moving and exciting and all that sort of thing. It wasn't just a barrage of fan service for fan service sake. I think it's one of those rare occasions where they got that balance correct, in my opinion. Anyway.
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree, because I think that, like, you know, to do what they did in a way that actually, you know, like, it served the character of Peter in this universe. It was a really tricky job to give him, you know, the antagonist of, you know, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, and, you know, and have it be so effective. You know, it was like, you know, no easy job, really. You know, you're taking, you know, two characters that actually have no relationship to each other, and then, you know, like, creating, you know, this dynamic that's like so intense by the end of the film. You know, it's just really clever. Willem Dafoe was sort of quoted as saying, like, you know, that somebody asked him, would you ever go back and you know, and be involved with you know, one of these films again? And he was like, well, only if they give me something to do. Like, you know, I'm really not bothered about showing up for just a cameo, but you know, if the role is right, then I would do it. And they really gave him something to work with here. You know, that was like, I mean, I couldn't have expected it to be as effective as it was. Like, you know,
I mean, the only real cameos were Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, and obviously Tom Hardy as whatever his name
as
is,
Venom,
nonsense at the end. But the rest of them, you know, were all absolutely integral to the plot. To, you know, they had character mini arcs within the story as well, and had plenty to do. And I think that was what was great. You know, was they didn't just waste those, because let's be honest, the villain casting in these films, you know, the Maguire films and the Andrew Garfield films, they've always hired fantastic actors, you know, Oscar winners in some cases, to actually play these villains. And they didn't have them show up for some just crummy cameo role. They actually had them as integral parts of this story, playing rounded characters. And for an effects heavy superhero movie, that's actually quite an achievement, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Alfred Molina, like, as I said, when he showed up on the bridge, everyone went completely bonkers.
Yeah.
And he was so good. And I loved his arc in this because it actually, you get the bad Doc Ock, who is like, who's really scary, but also really funny. Like, his presence when he was kind of wrapped up in the nano tentacles, and he couldn't move, but he's just giving all this like, sort of running commentary in the background. It was hilarious. But then also he gets his redemption arc, and by the end he's helping them, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell at the end if he showed up to switch sides and go back to sort of evil, or it was all kind of a feint and a sleight of hand to make the other bad guys think, oh, yeah, I am bad. Oh, but no, I'm not. And it was just like that was kind of not really clear. But I feel for the most part like the movie was a lot of fun. I mean, we've got to talk about Doctor Strange, I guess, because a major crucial part of this. And I've got to say, I was wrong with my theory from the original trailer, where I thought that Doctor Strange would be not Doctor Strange; it would be someone else playing, pretending to be.
Did you? Okay, and who would that have been?
Oh, I
know.
I mean, everyone's favorite is Mephisto, right?
Mephisto, of course. With good reason, if you're backing it up with comics reasons, that it would be someone else. Obviously, this film does draw from some pretty famous storylines, comics wise. Particularly in the end, where everyone needs to forget that Peter exists, essentially. That is straight up. One more day, one moment in time. Sorry. Yeah, and Brand New Day as well, because Brand New Day is the aftermath of that. But in that storyline, I don't know if you've read it, Keith.
No.
Okay, it's
I only know Doctor Strange from the movie.
It's all right, Keith. I haven't read it either.
Paul, I think you have, because it was the Straczynski run.
But I've only really read the first chunk of the Straczynski run. I've never to this day been able to get hold of the last bit.
Right.
So
I will say I thought Benedict Cumberbatch absolutely knocked it out of the park in this film. Doctor Strange is. I've always liked him when he's been sort of involved in the Avengers films and everything, but I'm not going to lie, I wasn't a massive fan of the standalone movie. I thought visually, again, it was stunning and whatever. But in this, he just worked so well. You're absolutely right. He was absolutely key and integral to the plot. But I just loved his performance. I loved the way he got more and more grumpy and annoyed with Peter.
It was
went on.
Call me sir. I agree. I think a lot of people feel that way about the solo Doctor Strange film. I do really enjoy it, but like it's very much like just kind of an introduction to the character. But I think that as he appears in more and more films and interacting with the other characters, you really see him growing into the character, and you really look forward to seeing him in interacting with other characters in the films. And I loved the scene in the Mirrorverse between him and Peter, where they bring you back into that awesome Mirrorverse from the Doctor Strange films. And of course, Peter traps him there. So
can I point out something I really liked about that?
Yeah.
If you look at the villains, they're all villains who kind of decided to build machines. Doc Ock was going to build his machine. In fact, looking for his machine when he arrives. The Lizard was in the process of building a machine or using a device.
Creating lizard serum or whatever. Yeah.
To turn everyone into lizards. And here you have Peter, our Peter Parker, Tom Holland, going after Doctor Strange, who is effectively carrying this machine around to, send all these guys back. And I thought it was a nice comment on the fact that all the other Spider-Men had been fighting against these guys whose kind of real weapon of choice was perverted science. And I thought that was incredibly well done. And of course, the whole thing of a mirror universe when you're in a film surrounded by, that has a character that has mirrors, and those mirrors come through into his world. And, I thought that the kind of subtext of that, although fairly obvious, was quite well done, and I really like that. Very, very disappointing not to see Kirsten Dunst or
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone, thank you, Liz.
They got mentions though, at least.
They did, and I think it might have been a shade too far to bring them into it. At this point, I think we had so many characters. It might have just been a little bit overkill to also bring them into it. And particularly in the case of Gwen Stacy, because there's a really emotional moment that happens between MJ and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man.
That was great.
That was tears in my eyes. Tears in my eyes.
Yeah. That was his redemption story. Is that redemption arc there, wasn't it? And that was I thought that was handled beautifully. I really did think there was some lovely stuff in this, and that moment was one of them for sure. The other thing that I thought was great in this is obviously the Tom Holland Spider-Man has been sort of criticized because obviously, Tony Stark in his earlier movie, or in the original Homecoming movie, kind of was the father figure, if you like, and sort of filled the Uncle Ben role, and we never really got the Uncle Ben scene and all of this sort of thing, which obviously we've had twice before anyway.
Right, so nobody wanted it, really.
Exactly. But I love the fact that they incorporated that into the Aunt May scene,
and
which
again,
was wonderful. Wonderful.
So
I love that.
One thing I have said before is that there's always that argument of, do we really need to see the assassination of Bruce Wayne's parents over and over again? I would say yes, and I'll tell you why. Because it is the crucial moment in the formation of Batman. Whereas with Peter Parker, you don't really need to see the origin, because that's not the crucial moment. The bit where he gets bitten by the spider is crucial to the kind of technical side of it, but it's not crucial to who he is. The crucial bit for me is, with great power comes great responsibility. So I was a bit miffed not to see Uncle Ben in Homecoming or Civil War, but then I'm not now, because they've managed to thread that throughout the three movies
very clever
in other ways,
cleverly.
and here in particular.
Well,
this is
sorry.
The statement they're kind of trying to make, I think, with this movie, in many ways, is that this is its own retelling of these classic moments and these classic characters, but they're putting their own spin on it. MJ is not Mary Jane Watson; she's Michelle Jones Watson. But she fills the same role. Ned is we find out that Ned is Ned Leeds. And who, there's I want to talk about, there's just a hilarious little interaction between him and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, where he's like, did you have a best friend? He's like, he died in my arms after trying to kill me. I was just like, and poor Ned's little crestfallen face, which of course the character of Ned Leeds, that's what happens to him. In the comics, that's exactly what happens to him. So it was a nod on multiple levels. But,
even I picked up on that one.
Right.
So there you go.
Poor little Ned, But they're saying that, these are characters that and tropes that but we're going to do them in our own way. And I thought it was really lovely that they gave that moment to Aunt May instead of Uncle Ben, but it serves the same function. There wasn't a dry eye in my cinema, when that happened.
And of course,
bawling.
It's still the same level of guilt, because back when you do the Uncle Ben death, Peter always feels responsible, and he feels responsible again here. I really like the kind of emotion you get from meeting the two other Spider-Men. I thought that was great. I am going to talk about some negatives in a minute, though. Just to warn you,
That's
I
okay,
know
that's okay.
everyone's been resoundingly positive about this, and I'm not trying to piss on anyone's chips, but
Okay.
I do have some quite major negatives. Can I talk about one big positive though first, which is the opening sequence of the film? I like amazing. That is some of the best directing I've ever seen in a Marvel movie, because you've got this entirely subjective camera throughout a lot of it, traveling with MJ and Peter, and then into the apartment, and then that high energy sequence happening where there are like 8 things going on, then 10 things going on, then there are 12 things going on, and there are helicopters. And I've got to say, the energy and drive in that was beautiful. And I was like, please let them carry on with this energy and drive. Here's the negatives. They didn't. I feel that then what started to happen was a lot of the energy and drive and that inventiveness in the directing started to seep from the film. And once that leaking started, didn't really stop. And my problem is that I felt, one of the many problems I had, I felt that the film kind of felt like it had been rewritten on the run and reshot very quickly. Because they kept coming up with ideas, which are great. You know, it's great to have ideas. It's great to be able to act on them. And it's especially great to be able to act on them in a, you know, $260 million blockbuster. However, I think the film started to feel increasingly very thrown together for large chunks of it. And if you look at it, a lot of it is people standing around in rooms talking. And it's just like, you know, exposition. There's a better way to do this. And I think there are filmmakers that, and I'm not knocking John Watts because I think he's terrific, but there are filmmakers that do it better. And you've only got to look at, you know, Liz, you mentioned him, you know, the Spider-Man project that never got made, James Cameron. Now, that's a guy who would have done the exposition in this film a heck of a lot better. And
like he did in Terminator. Yeah.
Oh, like,
yeah.
Keith, come on. Like, is there anything better than the exposition in Terminator for exposition?
Yeah,
where it's all done on the run.
Yeah.
And I feel that if they could have kept the energy up and still got the same amount of exposition. Also, my problem increasingly with Marvel now is that the filmmaking craft is just flatlining. The actual craft is really flatlining. And it's just like, yeah, this is a great film. This is a fun script. This is really, you know, you're really getting the metaphors and all that stuff in. But it feels like in order to get that in, it's just point a camera at that and shoot it. And it's just like, yeah, okay. But there's other stuff. I was talking about this with Owen today about, you know, we were talking about Hot Fuzz as one of our picks. The movies we were talking about this morning, and I feel that they need someone like Edgar Wright to come in and give them a shot in the arm.
Well, Edgar Wright was going to come in and give them a shot in the arm,
like,
but it didn't work out.
He kind of needs to reteach them, you know, transitioning from one scene to another. How do you get from here to here, and how do you do it in the fastest way possible? Because I'm sure the movie could have been shorter. And how do you get it in the best way possible for the story, and you know, and still deliver those moments. And I feel that with the Marvel films, a lot of the craft is going. Some of the effects in this were really shonky. The lizard, it's just like all we've done is take all the footage from the lizard back in the Amazing Spider-Man movie and just cut it out in Photoshop and plonk it on there because it just looked bad. And it's like, no, come on, you are the MCU. You should be doing this 10 times better than anyone else. And I feel what was quite obvious to me was that Rhys Ifans was never on set apart from his very last scene. I'm willing to bet he did maybe a day or two on set throughout that film. Mm-hmm. And the same for Thomas Hayden Church. Mm-hmm. And what they did instead was just get a couple of body doubles, scan their faces in, and and do it that way. And I feel that is really sloppy. And I feel a lot of the film is actually quite sloppy and baggy, and it doesn't need to be. And it's just like, look, if you're spending this amount of money, you can spend a bit more money in the story conference side and the scripting side, and get someone to come in. And, you know, I don't know who's rewriting Marvel movies, because, you know, Keith and I, we used to, you know, script doctors, right? I mean, we know a lot about, you know, people coming in and rewriting and never being credited. But I don't know who the script doctor is on Marvel movies.
Who knows? I mean, they do have, you know, I mean, I've read interviews with Kevin Feige and and what is her name from Sony? Like,
Amy
you know,
Pascal.
Amy Pascal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They, you know, and they as much as say, like, you know, a lot of this was wrangling actors into the roles, and, like, you know, and some of that was happening as the script was being written, and, you know, they were writing things not knowing whether or not the actor was going to commit to the role. So they're, you know, who knows how much of that was kind of last minute. I think that is possibly why both of those characters are a bit underdeveloped compared to the other three, which, you know, I feel like you know, Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, and Jamie Foxx, all, you know, they all had pretty substantial important roles, whereas the other two, you know, it's like you could kind of, they didn't need to be there, but I enjoyed seeing them nonetheless.
And I think that with some of it, and this is the downside of everyone applauding when those guys walk through portals and stuff. One, the portal scene did feel a bit like, and it's time for Oscar-nominated actor Andrew Garfield. And you feel like there's someone off screen kind of ushering that in. And it's just like, I don't need that.
I don't agree.
More organic. And I feel it could have been more organic.
I disagree with that on that moment.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You can
you know,
disagree.
for me,
you're wrong, but you
feel,
can disagree.
No. It didn't feel, certainly not. There was like the biggest round of applause in the movie for that moment. It didn't feel manufactured to me. It felt like a perfect, like, you know, like the perfect way to introduce it, because you didn't know, you know, as that Peter is stepping closer and closer, and then you hear his voice, it's like, that's when you know, oh my God, this isn't the Peter that, you know, they're trying to summon. I thought it was a great moment, really, really well done. So for me, I just don't feel that never struck me as you know, in any kind of cynical way. You know.
But yeah, I mean, overall, the craft is disappearing from these movies, and I saw it in Shang-Chi. You see it in Eternals. And the visual effects craft is really suffering, and you know, that's actually starting to piss me off, and it's really starting to kind of.
I mean, I think you know, you got to pick and choose what you're talking about. I think that some of it looks amazing, like, you know, I think that that, like, you know, Doc Ock, Peter's suit looks like incredible, like, you know, like loads of the effects, all the Doctor Strange stuff looks incredible, like, and so you could quibble and say, okay, Lizard does look kind of lame. I'll agree with you there. You know, Sandman looks a little lame, but it's like, you know, I think for me that's a really minor quibble, because it didn't detract from the story for me.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's interesting that you brought up Eternals there, for example, because I think if we take something like that, I agree. I think some of the CG in that looked hokey. Right. But in terms of how it was directed and the craft of the directing, I actually thought, you know, she did a great job on it. But I just thought I couldn't give a crap about the story or the characters.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, I could overlook. I mean, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the direction here either. But he's a good director. I'm not knocking that.
The thing with this is I thought that the script was actually really, really good, because you know, it was funny, it had jokes, and it was self-referential. You had that thing about "you're amazing," Toby kept saying to Andrew Garfield and all this, which was, you know, obviously a bit meta and all of that sort of stuff.
But the problem is,
it was a good story.
You can't confuse a good, witty, fun script with a well-structured and put together one. And I think this is the problem that people have with Marvel movies, is they think because they laughed and they had a good time, they had fun, that what they were watching was a well-structured movie. And a lot of the times you just aren't. And that's the problem I have. But I still enjoyed watching it. And I don't want to take away from that experience. I still enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
But I think there's the filmmaker part of my brain and the script writing part of my brain that goes, nah, mate, come on.
This is back to the whole Edgar Wright thing and why that didn't work out. Because let's be honest, these are producer-led movies.
Very
and
true.
There is a house style to them. That's not to say that the directors don't bring anything to it, but there is essentially a house style to that universe, right? To make it coherent across all these movies. And I think Edgar Wright, I mean, who knows? But, you know, back in those Ant-Man days, he wanted to do something, you know, far more left field, I think, with the way he wanted to take it than would have fitted in with the rest of the established Marvel, you know, canon that they were setting up, or universe that they were setting up. So I don't know. I think that's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about the Edgar Wright thing, from what I know, I mean, he that was being developed before Iron Man came out. And the storyline that I believe he wanted to do was Irredeemable Ant-Man, which is actually a different character to Scott Lang, who's like and I think what he wanted to do just did not fit in with what the MCU was doing. And it was just kind of, you know, so he wanted to tell a completely different story. I don't think that they would necessarily, you know, not, or that they would rule him out as a director of a future film. Because I think they, you know, he probably.
In fact, my money is on Edgar Wright being back for Phase 5.
I would believe it, you know, but I think that was just not the right project because what they needed from Ant-Man was just not the story he was going to tell. He had a whole script that was completely unusable. So right down to the lead character. So. You know, I mean, fingers crossed for that. I think Marvel do like to take chances on directors, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse. Like, you know, I feel like Chloe Zhao, unfortunately, just really wasn't the fit for telling a Marvel film, you know, unfortunately. But you know, they have taken chances on directors like James Gunn. Like, if you look at his background as a filmmaker, it's just like you wouldn't even, you know, you'd never consider that he'd be
to be fair,
a choice for them.
Liz, I don't know if you remember our conversation back when I first saw Cop Car after Spider-Man No Way Home, and I actually went to Liz and went, I cannot tell what went through their minds and why they looked at Cop Car and went, oh yeah, Spider-Man. Right. I just cannot tell beyond the fact that there are kids in it. Like that's the only thing I can think of.
And John Watts is great with like writing teenage characters and you know.
Do you know what? If I wonder, this is going to sound really cynical because they're not bad. They're not bad filmmakers that they're hiring. But I wonder if it's just a matter of they're getting a lot of online kudos. So hire them.
I don't know about that because a lot of their choices are not necessarily like, you know, big fan favorite choices. A lot of them are kind of like, you know, up and comers. And
well,
you know,
I mean, it might be so that might be they're cheap. I can pay them $1 million rather than Edgar Wright 5, you know. But anyway, so those are my negatives. But overall, I've got to say, I loved the experience. I had a really good time. The audience had a good time. It was made up, as I said, mostly of teenage kids who were having fun. And I didn't even mind the fact that a lot of them were talking throughout the movie because they were kind of talking about the movie and about what was going on. And like the kids were already kind of sweet and nice. And I kind of liked that they were there having a good time. You know, it's Christmas and Christmas is really for children. I think for a lot of people nowadays. No, it isn't. I love Christmas. I mean, Christmas is definitely my time of year. But yeah. I feel that there's certain things getting lost. Just to talk about, we've got 11 minutes. Let's talk about the end credit scenes. Unless there's anything anyone else wanted to get across.
I mean, there were a lot of things. I mean, I feel like we've skimmed over the surface of a lot of what was great about it, but
yeah, but we've also got it done in an hour.
Right.
We've retained the audience attention.
I've been holding it all in, Paul. I haven't gone.
Hey guys, if you want to do a special on it, I fully support that.
I know Liz will come on to that one.
Right. Yeah.
And talk it out. You go ahead and do that. I'm just a bit too busy right now.
Fair enough.
But I'm not stopping anyone else from doing their thing.
There are a few things that I'd like to mention before we get into the end credits. Just a few, just some little little moments. That as like a sort of Marvel geek.
Please.
There were some kind of just like neat little, as you say, meta things that happen like that.
For God's sake, woman, get to it.
Oh, shot it!
Tell us what they are. You're all filler, no killer. Come on.
Oh, let's see me go killer. Like, you keep cutting me off.
Just start.
Really, sending my train of thought here in different directions. So just meta things, okay? One of the things that I really liked, that little scene that, we had sort of leaked onto the internet where it's like Happy, May, and Matt Murdock and Peter sitting around the table. Lest we forget, Jon Favreau played Foggy Nelson.
Yes.
In the 2003 Daredevil movie. So there is just that, and that's actually apparently having that role helped him get Iron Man 3 or Iron Man 1. As the director. Which I just thought that was like, it's just so cool. That there's like all these things working on different levels. Like if you want to look for them, because Feige was involved with all that stuff, those early 2000s films, So it's like, oh, okay, if not for him being in that terrible Daredevil movie, maybe we wouldn't have gotten Iron Man 1. Who knows if all, any of this would have existed. Just little things like that. Lots of little details. We haven't even talked about J. Jonah Jameson. I love J. That was the thing that really, when we reviewed Spider-Man Far From Home, and people were asking me, like, I sort of posted something on Twitter saying, "Oh, this film does something that no other film has done so far," which was actually that's the first time we get this like sense that there's a multiverse and that, in fact, some of these characters can exist in each other's universe. Mm-hmm. So Jonah, like, that was like probably, I would speculate that the introduction of him might have sparked this whole thing, when they cast him at the end of
absolutely,
No Way Home.
Yeah. Although they are working several years in advance, as I understand.
Sure.
So maybe not. I mean, sorry, Keith, go.
No, I was going to say we're obviously going to see this with DC as well, aren't we? With the new Flash movie, the same sort of thing's going to happen. But sorry, Liz, you've got another.
Oh yeah, speaking of which, now that you mention it, that actually there's like the Flash's book, Flashpoint, is another little meta thing because it's like a wink and nod at Flashpoint as a storyline where there are universes colliding. So it's like, I just thought that was really clever as well. It's just like lots of little things. If you're a comics fan and you want to pick up on little Easter eggs, they're all over the place in there.
I really like that one. Yeah. I was really sad that I don't think Tony Revolori got enough to do, and neither did Anjuri Rice. I would love to have seen more of them, but I understand why they couldn't fit it in. Mm-hmm. And I did like to see Martin Starr and
that
Smooth and I can't remember his name. Hannibal Buress, I think he plays like the gym teacher. Like I loved seeing those three.
Oh yes,
with their like Spidey, the Spidey shrine, like shrine, which it was all of that stuff.
I mean, one of the things, I'll summarize because I know you want to finish here, Paul, and talk about the ending. So this sort of leads into the ending, all right? So, but one of the things. I know you always kind of laugh at me about my.
We can go slightly over now.
No.
Right?
I know you always kind of laugh at me about my obsession with continuity, and I know because it's a big thing for me, and I know. But the what the multiverse has allowed essentially is that anything goes, And I'm kind of like the fact that they've made the other Spider-Man films, which I was a fan of. Sort of relevant and it all sort of counts in this big multiverse that they've set up. But the other thing that I really like that this has done is I'm really pleased that we've got Peter Parker now about to go to uni, but we've got him stripped back so he doesn't have money. He lives in a shoddy apartment. He's got a more basic suit. He hasn't got Stark and nanotech. You know, everything's sort of stripped back to the essence of what Spider-Man is, and he can now meet new enemies and new allies along the way. And I think the way they handled that kind of soft reboot within this storyline without messing up any of the other MCU, I really like the way they handled that. And that, of course, takes us to the end that I know you guys want to talk about. But yeah.
And also, I just say about, sorry, Liz, before we go into that, I just want to say there are two films you've got to thank for these approaches now. One is Batman Begins back in 2005, because I think that reset redrew the rules about how you can approach a superhero origin, which effectively this gets to be all over again. And you know, the beloved relative dies. You get, you know, from great power comes great responsibility. You get all that stuff. You get to redo the origin.
Yeah.
And as you say, Keith, stripping it back. And Star Trek in 2009, which showed you, hey, you can do an in-continuity reboot and still have it be of that universe, and yet not. So I think kudos to those filmmakers for making those movies that whether you know it or not, reset the rules of what can be done. Liz, I'm sorry I cut you off. Please continue.
Not at all. I feel like I want to weigh in and agree with Keith's point that, you know, like bringing Tom Holland Spider-Man, you know, to this stripped back place where, you know, he, like, nobody remembers who he is. He's lost his aunt. He's lost the, you know, the girl he loves, his best friend. It puts him in a really interesting place, you know, for future films. And, like, you know, Tom Holland has not actually sort of, you know, come out and said that he's willing to do future films. But Feige and Pascal have said, well, we're planning another 3 movies. So it'll be really interesting to see what direction those films will go, because, you know, like these first 3, there was a lot of, you know, like, you know, like John Watts's, you know, particular sort of like charming, like John Hughes vibe about, you know, about them. But, you know, like now the setup's going to be completely different. So it's like, oh, okay, well, and I just have no idea what to expect.
We're back to secret identities again, aren't we?
Yeah, and I which is kind of an interesting thing, because most of the Marvel universe is dispensed with secret identities, and it's only Spider-Man that carries that torch. I would like to see a different director come in now, and I think they should call it the Spectacular Spider-Man, and it should be anything but. What it actually should be is a kind of stripped back, street level, almost kind of, you know, bordering on that thing of how do I handle my life with no money, no girlfriend, no prospects, but once I put on this costume, I'm the most amazing guy around, you know. And I think that's what it should be.
There's an interesting direction they could take it, in fact, if they wanted to do sensational Spider-Man. The point that we leave off with, Pete, is a bit like Back in Black, which, you know, he returns in the black suit. You know, sort of in that storyline, May is shot and she's, you know, dying. And, you know, you get this, like, Peter puts the black costume back on. And, you know, he's kind of, he goes a bit dark. Now, talking about the post-credits scene, there is something that could then tie into that quite interestingly. You know, that is a whole different kind of black suit scenario. But now has the power to exist within
That's right.
This,
Tom Hardy leaves a tiny drop of the Venom symbiote.
A little glob of Venom.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I mean, not Tom Hardy. I guess I'm assuming Venom did that himself. Like he's kind of
yeah, because Venom was the one that recognized Peter Parker in the post credits or whatever that they had on that Not that I saw it, but the
And I did like that
Right.
scene where Venom is the one with the intelligence going, yeah, the barman's explained this to us 4 times already.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. I mean, that scene did crack me up a lot.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when there's he's like a purple guy with rings, and like, you know, like Venom is just like, you know, the whole thing was just hilarious.
that
Yeah.
was good.
Mhm.
That was good.
But it leaves off with okay, well, now we've got Venom in the MCU. Is he going to go, you know, bond with Peter? You know, what's going to happen? Like, you know, because I mean, if you're going to try and sort of stick with the classic Venom story, it's like, yeah,
I mean,
him bonding with Peter first is a big deal.
And
I don't
did
know,
you?
because, sorry, go on.
No.
Go for it.
You want to finish a point about Venom, and mine's slightly off tangent to that.
No.
So sorry.
I just wanted to say I'm not sure Peter would allow that to happen because of the kind of warnings that Andrew Garfield gave him about becoming vengeful and angry and bitter, you know. But Keith, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one other thing that I don't know about you guys, but I like it when a script or a film can move me like this. But one thing that I found absolutely heartbreaking, and I thought the way they directed it was so good, was when he goes to the diner to see MJ.
Yeah.
And you know, he's got his speech in his back pocket. You know, he's all ready for it, and she brushes back her hair, and you see the Band-Aid. You know, from the battle and stuff, and that's what makes him put the letter away and decide.
Reminds him, yeah.
Oh my god, that was
the
heartbreaking cinema. That was, and I
love
it was beautifully done.
Yeah.
I absolutely love those two, both in the films and in real life. I think they're absolutely adorable, and that relationship is absolutely adorable, and it's very wholesome. And
which I think the other thing I think is very funny, if you want to harken back to the previous 2 Spider-Men, they both dated their leading ladies too. Tobey Maguire was going out with Kirsten Dunst, and Andrew Garfield was going out with Emma Stone. So you know,
God, some guys get all the luck, don't they?
Apparently, yeah.
But what was I going to say? I mean, the thing with Zendaya is a little bit like the thing with Haley Steinfeld. Is you know, they've got that sort of screen presence X factor about them. You know what I mean? There's this. I mean, Denis Villeneuve uses it essentially for the whole drive of Dune. You know, it's the flashes of her that drives the character of Paul, you know, on that journey. And I do think that you know the young actors in this, that sort of trio of Peter, MJ, and Ned, just worked really well in this film, and they had some wonderful scenes together. So I thought
all 3 of them, yeah. I thought that Ned using the sling ring, and you know, like performing, you know, the magic, you know, opening the portals was really great. You know, and sort of, you know, early in the film, saying, "Oh yeah, my grandma thinks that I have some magic powers," and you know, then it kind of turns out that he does. Like,
bit disappointing not to see Nicholas Hammond turn up, Keith.
I was actually going to say that, but I thought it would take us off track too much. But
yeah, especially since he was so good as Sam Wanamaker in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I thought that would have been something of a career resurgence for him.
I think it's safe to say that in the multiverse, his Spider-Man retired by that point, because he was out fighting crime as a grad student in 1977. So
it would have been valid. I'd have loved to have seen.
They could have done it, but you know, maybe next time. Maybe next time. I mean,
also, that would have been good.
In terms of little grace notes, Liz, I did want to point out did you see the lovely thank you in the credits to Avi Arad, which I thought was quite nice.
Oh, I didn't know.
There was a big
really cool.
single credits card where it said, you know, we would like to take the opportunity to thank Avi Arad, who first had the vision. And
do you think that was contractual? Do you think that was contractual though?
I don't know. Genuine? I think he, you know, did Avi Arad die recently?
I'm actually not sure.
If he did. I wonder if he did.
That up.
So, just while I'm doing that, do you guys want to start talking about the very final end credit scene, the trailer really for
Multiverse of Madness?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that Obviously, while I was sitting there, in the cinema, usually what Marvel tend to do is they do their kind of like big stinger right after the, first credits roll.
Yeah.
And then the final one is usually just a little blip, like, Howard the Duck showing up or whatever, where it's just, something kind of inconsequential, but fun if you want to stick around. Whereas this, it was like, I don't know, 3 minutes long or something like that. It was like,
it's quite a long...
it was like a big
it
trailer.
was effectively... See, I didn't realize about all the characters we're going to get in that movie, because we're going to get America Chavez, which
America
I didn't...
Chavez, yep. Oh, I did know that we're getting America, which makes sense because she...
I don't think I did for this movie.
Yeah. America Chavez...
Javier is still with us, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I just...
He's just getting a nice thank you. Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it leaves us in interesting space. And of course, we've got the original Spider-Man director, Sam Raimi, coming on board for this.
So cool.
The film is undergoing reshoots now. Benedict Cumberbatch has admitted it's to kind of sharpen it up a bit. And I think there were a couple of things that due to COVID, they couldn't get in quite the way they wanted. So they've gone back and redone them. But it looks like a fascinating movie. We're going to get, monsters. So we're kind of back in that Eternals arena.
Baron Mordo's in it, which I wasn't sure if they were going to bring Baron Mordo back.
Absolutely. I'm quite excited about that. It looks great. I'm kind of done. I'm finished, really. I've got nothing else to say about this. And
nothing else. Okay.
Quite frank, I really need to go and have a whiz. So...
Classy way to leave it, Paul.
Yeah. Well, I'm nothing if not classy, Liz. You taught me everything I know back in our days at Orbital.
Wow.
Oh my God. Well, all right. Yeah.
I'm literally between the banter. I am literally between you.
You are.
It's a good place to be. The only reason you're here, mate, is because you're a buffer tonight. To stop us from verbally killing each other. No, I'm just
okay. I wonder what you meant by that. Okay.
I'm a tough love person, and I do tend to wind people up a bit. So that's all this is. So, guys, I mean,
final thoughts.
Yeah, go for it.
Keith, would you like to?
No.
I don't have one, but
I do. I just thought I'd be polite. And,
go for it, Liz. No.
Okay. All right. I think that really this like absolutely fulfilled all of my hopes and dreams for it. And then some. I knew that they were gonna nail it. I just did, and they really nailed it. All the emotional highs and lows. For me, really, some of what you were talking about, Paul. I can acknowledge that there were bits of CGI that weren't the best, but none of that mattered to me because. And where you say structure and things, none of that mattered to me either. I was so emotionally drawn in by everything that was going on that I was just caught up in it. I was I was just, thrill after thrill. There were, moments I genuinely laughed, moments I genuinely cried. And really, I don't think, as Keith had said, since Endgame, I don't think I've had an experience like this in the cinema. And I don't know the next time I possibly will, because they just completely threw out the rule book to make this film. And, and it just worked so well. And now it's I don't know what to expect. Now I feel really excited and thrilled, all right, now they could, make another Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film that exists in its own universe if they want to. They could do the same with Andrew Garfield. They could, bring them all together again. They could do whatever they want, which is just so exciting and cool. And even if they want to just end their stories there, fine. But I think fans would love to see him again. I would. I'd love to see Alfred Molina again. I'd love to see Willem Dafoe again, all those actors. And, it's yeah, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. It's those movies are now canon. All of these movies are now canon, which is amazing to me. So, I just feel like it's opened the door for some really cool possibilities in terms of, seeing characters and actors that I loved in those past movies and feeling okay, their stories haven't necessarily died. If they want to bring back Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy as Xavier and Magneto, they can, and that's great. So, I think my main takeaway from this is just like, I just think it's brilliant. I just think it's brilliant what they've done and how much it, the potential it has to enhance, the future of the MCU.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Keith?
Well, I echo all of that, really. This delivered. I had such a good time with it. I like the fact that, as Liz has said, it made everything else canon. I like the way it's also a little bit of a soft reboot for Spider-Man, which I think is intriguing for moving forward, because I think they got themselves in a little bit of a corner. So I think this solves that problem. I'm looking forward to seeing it again in 3D. This next to Endgame has been the most enjoyable MCU film for me personally. I loved it. I've got to say as well, and I can without being inappropriate, because she's actually older than I am, but Marissa Tomei, she's still got it, smoking hot.
No? She does still got it.
She's still totally got it.
I am going to really miss.
How do you manage to talk when you've always got your foot in your mouth? Like...
No, I caveated it by saying she's older than I am, so it's not.
Yeah, but the caveat was, oh Jesus Christ!
I know. Aunt May was a highlight of this thing, and her story arc was emotional. The thing on her tombstone at the end said it all. What is it? If you can help one person, you help everyone. Or if I misquoted her, it's something
it's to that effect. And
I don't think the fictional dead character is going to mind if she's been misquoted.
But I was, I hope that some way, somehow, we haven't seen the last of Marissa Tomei as Aunt May.
She's a great actor, and she did make some very weird comments in the press recently about, no one cares if I'm in Spider-Man or not.
But we do.
And I wonder if that was like a precursor to like the death thing, and but wonderful actor. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking
it. On a light note. Sorry, I was just trying to make you laugh.
You've both done a wonderful job. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you both taking time out your afternoon Liz, your
morning,
afternoon,
your
evening,
like noon.
Yeah. The joy of time differences. Thank you very much, and Keith, thank you for doing this on such short notice, because literally it was just late last night that I messaged you and asked you to come on.
I've been absolutely itching for a chance to talk about this. I mean, you mentioned Star Trek and Batman, which I totally agree with, but I also have to say that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is owed a big credit as
absolutely, yeah,
around as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thank you for having me on, and I love your show, by the way. If you're watching this, you already tune into the Comic Crush. But seriously, I love your coverage on Hawkeye. What you're doing is amazing.
Right, so we do have to give some plugs here. First and foremost, Liz's website at lizcjordan.com, which is a terrific website full of wonderful reviews for comics and films. Liz is an amazingly adept and skilled writer on these pop culture subjects, and her stuff is well worth reading, so please check that out. There is a link in the description below, and you can follow her on Twitter at lizcjordan. Keith's channel, which is a channel all about home media and physical film formats. There you go. He's just done a kind of look at this particular Spider-Man deluxe box set. Am I right, Keith? Spider-Man trilogy deluxe box set.
Yeah. It's a Blu-ray deluxe set with a producer's cut of Spider-Man 3.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Which
really?
Well. Yeah, like Keith and I were talking about this off air right before we began.
Okay.
I did not know there was like a that different cut because I rewatched Spider-Man 3 last night. As part of my
idiot
Spidey marathon that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks, where I've been rewatching all the Spider-Man films. in building up to seeing No Way Home. But I sort of skipped Spider-Man 3, at the time. So I figured I would rectify that and go back and watch it again. I would like to see an edited cut. As Keith said, it's supposed to be more coherent and maybe fixes some of the problems that movie had, which is just too many villains.
I think I'll try and get hold of that box set then, because that sounds great. And this is all stuff you can what?
Links are in the show notes.
Links are in the show notes down below. Yes, so there will be a link to Keith's channel. It's well worth checking out and subscribing to. He does some wonderful live streams on cult and genre film. I'm hoping to see have him on this show more next year. I've got some great things planned that we're kind of in talks about now. So please stick with us. Yeah, as I said, we are taking the big January break, but that's just because we're bloody exhausted. But Keith won't be taking a break. He will be still putting out loads of content. Liz, I'm sure, will be writing about comics. Sorry, Keith, I landed you in.
I was going to say, I was planning on taking a break as well.
So Keith won't be putting out any content in the month of January. There'll be lots of stuff, lots of written content on the Comic Crush, though, and there might be a few sort of little solo videos from me, but we're just taking a review break for a while, because the shows are all going to kind of change a bit in the new year, and hopefully be a bit more smooth and a bit more kind of visually interesting for you. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Keith, you can follow at Home Media Mine on Twitter, at Home Media Minefield on Instagram, and of course find him on Facebook, where he puts out most of his stuff, and you got show links all there. Liz, Twitter at Liz C. Jordan, and of course check out lizcjordan.com. Myself at The Comic Crush, or at Comic Crush Paul, if you just want to follow me personally and watch me moan about the life of a 46-year-old not particularly well-off person. You can do that. Aches and pains, hot water bottles. This is what my life is now, guys. That and
doesn't have
martinis. I don't have the energy that Keith has, really. Keith does like 5K and 10K runs.
I go to the gym, I'm just, limber you up, Paul.
Yeah. I mean, do you find going to the gym really gets in the way of smoking your vape, though, Liz? just
occasionally, for like an hour or two at a time, but that's all right, It'll still be there when I get out.
She loves to exercise to work on her glutes and all that kind of stuff, but then also loves to work on the wet lung that she's developing.
Checks and balances.
So you can laugh like Paul.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That wheezy snigger.
I know, yeah.
That's like because I do, I am
cultivating it.
I love it. I love hearing you laugh during the things when you're.
Everything from the waist up and the knees down in my body is completely shot and falling apart. God. So,
Paul, we're still live. I don't know whether you realise we're still.
I don't care if they don't know by now. They're watching the wrong show, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks to everyone who tuned in on the podcast. There is a podcast only show on in which Owen Michael Johnson, the writer of Real Love and Beastwagon, and I go through all the picks of Christmas films from the Christmas radio times. We don't know why we did it either, but you can catch that. It's podcast only, Spotify, Apple, and all other podcast services. And of course, this is on YouTube, and you can catch us on Spotify and Apple with this particular show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Merry Christmas to you all. Keith, I'm not sure I'm going to see you again this year. So Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and thank you so much for appearing on all these shows this year, and for your endless kind of patience and knowledge and sense of fun that you've brought to this. I really love having you on. Liz, it's been a crushing disappointment as always. No, I'm just kidding. Liz and I have two final shows to go. In theory, or one final show. We haven't decided yet, but there's definitely a final show next week.
Definitely Hawkeye, and maybe the comic show
next week. Yeah, and maybe an end of year comic show, all coming out next week, and then I'm going to collapse. But it's been fun as always, Liz. I always say this. I love the knowledge and enthusiasm that you bring to these shows.
Agreed.
And obviously so much more knowledge about, especially about Marvel comics, than I could bring. And I really thank you for that, and thank you for kind of sharing that with us. It's lovely to have you on, as always.
I've been trying to steal Liz onto some of my streams sometimes, just because I want somebody with the knowledge of the source material. And every time I listen to yours, I'm like, oh, I wish I knew that before we recorded, and I wish I knew that.
You
need to. You're negotiating with the wrong person. You need to negotiate with Liz here.
I did ask for permission first, Paul, didn't I?
It will happen. It will happen.
You don't have to ask me
sure.
first.
Like,
I'm not. I don't control what Liz does in any way, shape, or form. One day I'm going to release the secret messages as a book, so people can read the amount of effort that has to be made into reorganizing the times and dates that we do shows. Actually, no, I'm just as bad lately. But yeah, lots of stuff coming up in 2022. Stick with us for the next week and the last show or shows of the year. It's been a pleasure as always. Look, we've gone way over. I'm very annoyed with myself, and most of all with Liz.
And it's my fault. I was the extra element in your flow.
No, and it's been a pleasure having you on, and always a pleasure having Liz on, despite what I say. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas to you both.
Merry Christmas.
And we'll catch you later. So we are out.